So the next topic is electrical properties in solids. Electrical properties in solids. So based on the electrical conductivity, solids are mainly classified into three types. They are conductors, insulators, semiconductors. So conductors are the substances which conduct electricity to a maximum extent because of the flow of free electrons. Okay, so these are the substances which conduct electricity. Examples, you may consider iron solid, next copper, aluminium, etc. Whereas insulators are the substances which do not conduct any electricity. For example, wood, next plastics, right, rubber, they are all insulators. Whereas semiconductors, these are the substances whose electrical conductivity values lie in between conductors and insulators. So it conducts electricity to a little extent. Its conductivity lies in between conductors and insulators. Examples, silicon, germanium, right. So the electrical conductivity in these solids, in these three materials or in these three substances can be explained using band theory also. Band theory. See, in the first year classes we were studied the concept of molecular orbital theory, right, in the chemical bonding chapter, molecular orbital theory, where the combination of atomic orbitals, it gives rise to two types of molecular orbitals. One is lower energy bonding molecular orbital and higher energy anti-bonding molecular orbital. Here in band theory, we consider the lower energy orbitals as valence band, clear, valence band, and the higher energy orbital is conduction band. Similar to in molecular orbitals, where we considered the lower energy orbital as bonding, higher energy orbital as anti-bonding molecular orbital. Here it is in band theory, it is valence band and conduction band. See, in conductors, the valence band, either it is partially filled or completely filled. What happens in conductors? In conductors, valence band, it may be partially filled by the electrons, partially filled, or maybe completely filled by the electrons. So what happens, both the valence band and conduction band, they overlap one another. They overlap with one another like this. So here there is a presence of electrons. So as we increase the temperature, these electrons can easily jump to the conduction band because of the no gap in between these two bands. So on increasing the temperature, the electrons can jump easily to the higher energy band, that is conduction band, hence conductors, it conducts electricity. Whereas in case of insulators, there is a large gap between valence band, this is valence band, this is conduction band. There is a large energy gap which is known as forbidden energy gap. The gap is large here. In insulators, there is a large gap between valence band and the conduction band, hence electrons cannot jump. Therefore, it do not conduct any electricity. In terms of band theory, we can also explain like this. Whereas in semiconductors, it conducts electricity to a smaller extent, and the gap between conduction band and valence band is small here, small here. Therefore, as we increase the temperature, electrons can jump from valence band to conduction band. Thereby it can conduct electricity. Okay. Now we'll study about the semiconductors, and it's two types. So now let us consider semiconductors. Under that we have two types. They are intrinsic semiconductors and extrinsic semiconductors. Semiconductors, two types: intrinsic semiconductors extrinsic semiconductors. What are intrinsic semiconductors? Intrinsic in the sense pure semiconductors. We are not adding any impurity atoms here. Example, silicon, germanium. So silicon and germanium, they are group 14 elements, right? It comes under group 14, 14th group, having 4 valence electrons. So what happens if you consider silicon crystal? Each silicon, it will form 4 bonds, covalent bonds with the neighboring silicon atoms, right? Why it will form 4 bonds? Because there are 4 valence electrons, so it will form 4 covalent bonds here like this. Okay, so these electrons, because of the I already explained using band theory, since in semiconductors there is a small gap between valence band and conduction band, so electrons can easily delocalizes over the entire crystal. So electrons goes on delocalizes. So as a result, as we increase the temperature, automatically the electrical conductivity increases. So intrinsic semiconductors are pure semiconductors. We are not adding any impurity atoms. Whereas extrinsic semiconductors, if you consider, there are 2 types, P-type and N-type. P-type and N-type. P in the sense, P stands for positive, where N negatively charged. So extrinsic semiconductors, usually they are obtained by adding any trivalent or any pentavalent impurity atoms to group 14 elements. What are group 14 elements? See, silicon, germanium, they are the pure semiconductors. So this is silicon crystal. To this intrinsic semiconductor, in order to increase or in order to enhance the electrical conductivity or to increase the electric conductivity other than temperature, temperature also is one of the factor. So other than temperature, we can also add any impurity atoms. Impurity, it may be trivalent or pentavalent. Trivalent in the sense valency 3, group 13 elements. We can add group 13 elements, or pentavalent, valency is 5, group 15 elements. So either we can introduce trivalent elements or pentavalent elements to intrinsic semiconductors. So now I'll consider here intrinsic semiconductor first. This is silicon, like this. Silicon with the 4 covalent bonds with the neighboring silicon atoms, like this. Now this is an example for intrinsic pure semiconductor. Now I will introduce any trivalent impurity. Trivalent in the sense group 13. Boron, aluminium, gallium, indium or thallium. I'll consider aluminium first. So aluminium, it is a group 13 element having 3 valence electrons. 3 electrons in the outermost shell, so it is trivalent. So I will introduce aluminium. So what happens, instead of in the place of silicon, one of the aluminium I'll write here, see, this is aluminium. How many valence electrons are there in aluminium? Because since it is group 13 having 3 valence electrons, so out of 3 electrons, these 3 electrons they are used in bond formation with the silicon. So it will form 3 covalent bonds with the silicon, and the place where the 4th electron is missing, in order to form 4 covalent bonds, aluminium must have 4 electrons, but aluminium is not have, there is a deficiency of 1 electron because it is a group 13 element, so only 3 electrons are there, so they will form a covalent bond with the silicon, and the 4th place where, or the place where the 4th electron is missing, it creates a hole in the sense deficiency of electron, only the positive charge is there, whereas 1 electron is remaining here, that is the electron of silicon, so this is free electron and this is a hole. So hole is created in the crystal now, having no electrons. Now what happens? From the adjacent position, from the adjacent bond, the electrons are transferred to that empty space or to a hole by creating one more hole at the next adjacent place. Again, this hole, this is occupied by the electron from the next adjacent position. So what happens throughout the crystal? There is a delocalization of holes along with the electrons also. So there are majority is holes. Majority carriers are holes here, positively charged particles. Therefore, this type of semiconductor is called p-type semiconductor. What is p-type semiconductor? It is a type of semiconductor which is produced or obtained by adding group 13 elements to an intrinsic semiconductor. Why we are adding group 13? Because to increase the electrical conductivity. That process is called doping. Doping, it is a process of adding an impurity atoms. Here we added electron deficient groups. They are electron deficient groups to an intrinsic semiconductor. So the type of a semiconductor generated here is p-type semiconductor, where holes are the majority carriers. Once we apply the electric field here, these holes and electrons, they move towards the opposite ends of the electric plate, thereby it generates the conductivity. Now let us consider n-type semiconductor. See, I'll consider silicon intrinsic semiconductor first. Like this. This is intrinsic semiconductor. Now, in order to increase the electrical conductivity, we can also introduce group 15 elements. They are the electron rich impurity atoms. Group 15, nitrogen, maybe nitrogen, phosphorus, arsenic, antimony, bismuth, all these are group 15 elements. So if we add any electron rich, because they have 5 valence electrons, 5 electrons in the outermost shell. So if we introduce any one of this element to this crystal, what happens? Instead of silicon, I'll choose phosphorus. Okay, phosphorus is having now it has 5 valence electrons. In phosphorus there are 5 valence electrons. Out of 5, 1 electron of phosphorus, it will form a bond with silicon, and 1 electron it will form a bond with the 1 electron of silicon, like this. 1 more covalent bond and 4 covalent bonds exist. Now in phosphorus, out of 5 electrons, 4 electrons are used in bond formation with the silicon atom, and the 1 electron is now remaining. It will delocalizes over the entire crystal. This electrons, what happens? This electrons gets delocalizes throughout the crystal. So once the electron flow is there in a crystal, automatically it conducts what? It conducts electricity. So the electrical conductivity of intrinsic semiconductor increased because of the addition of pentavalent impurity or electron rich impurity. Therefore, such type of semiconductor obtained after doping pentavalent impurity is called N-type semiconductors. Why it is N-type? Negatively charged, because electrons are the major carriers, majority charge carriers are electrons. So this is about semiconductors. It's two types, P-type and N-type. Sometimes you may get a question on this. Give an example or differentiate P-type and N-type semiconductors. Okay. Hope you all understood. The next topic is, it is the last topic of this chapter, magnetic properties in solids. Magnetic properties in solids. See, almost all the substances around us, they shows some kind of magnetic behavior. Either they may be attracted by the magnetic field, or they may get repelled by the magnetic field, or some substances may shows or may have a strong attraction towards the magnet. So all these magnetic properties of these substances are mainly due to the presence of electrons in it. So electrons are the major reason for the magnetic properties of substances. Now, see, if you consider any substances, they are all made up of a large number of atoms, right? So in an atom, if you take an example of any atom, at the center of the atom we have the nucleus, right? Whereas electrons, they are revolving around the nucleus in a definite path, in a definite circular path called orbits. So while revolving around the nucleus, electrons usually have two types of movements or motions, that is orbital motion and spin motion. Okay, so electron, it has two types of movement, orbital motion or orbital movement and spin motion. So what is orbital motion? So orbital motion in the sense, say electron here, it is revolving around the nucleus in a circular path. So that type of revolution is called orbital motion. Okay, what is spin motion? See, while rotating around the nucleus, so this is, if you consider this is a electron here. Okay, so while revolving around the nucleus, it will spin its own axis. It will spin about its own axis. Then it keeps on rotating or revolving around the nucleus. Okay, so there are two types of motion, orbital motion and spin motion. Due to these two types of motions of electrons, any substances gets magnetic behavior or it gets magnetic property. Okay, now based on this magnetic behavior or magnetic properties, the solids are classified into 5 types. They are paramagnetic. They are paramagnetic substances. Next, diamagnetic substances. Diamagnetic substances. Next one, ferromagnetic. Ferromagnetic substances. Ferromagnetic. Next, fourth type, that is antiferromagnetic substances, and the last one is ferrimagnetic. Ferrimagnetic. Okay, now let us consider paramagnetic substances first. What are paramagnetic substances? These are the substances, they are attracted by the magnetic field. See, if we apply any external magnetic field to such substances, then there is a attraction towards the field. Okay, so I'll give an examples for these type of substances. O2, oxygen in the liquid form. Next, copper sulfate, CuSO4, and any salts, see, like manganese sulfate, manganese. Okay, these are all attracted by the external magnetic field. Why it is so? So let us consider copper sulfate first. So in CuSO4, what is oxidation state of copper here? It is +2, because sulfate, it is -2, it is in the -2 form, so copper in the +2 state. So now let us write the electronic configuration here. See, atomic number of copper is 29, so it will come under D and F block elements that you will study in the separate chapter this year. Okay, now so 29, I'll write the last outermost configuration. Okay, it is 3D10 4s1. So last outermost valence shell configuration is 3D10 4s1. Now copper in the +2 state means you need to remove the 2 electrons. So here the last shell, outermost shell is 4th, having 1 electron. So first you need to remove the electron from the 4s, next from 3D. So what happens if you remove the 2 electrons? The configuration is changes to 3D9, because 1 electron is removed from the 4s and 1 more electron removed from the 3D orbital. So the configuration here is 3D9. Now see here, in D orbital again there are 5 degenerate orbitals. Like in case of P orbital, we have 3 suborbitals, right? Px, Py, Pz. Similarly, in case of D orbitals, there are 5 degenerate orbitals. They are dxy, dyz, dxz, dx square minus y square, and dz square. Okay, now let us place these electrons here. There are total 9 electrons, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, next 6, 7, 8, 9. Only in the last orbital there is only a 1 unpaired electron, whereas these are all in the 4 orbitals, all the electrons are paired here, so only 1 unpaired electron, 1 unpaired electron is present in copper sulfate, that is in Cu+2 state. That means any substance, if it is to be attracted by the magnetic field, then there should be a presence of 1 or more unpaired electrons. Understood? In any substance, if it is attracted by the magnetic field, that means it should have 1 or more unpaired electrons in it. The main condition to show the magnetic behavior, that is the presence of 1 or more unpaired electrons. So what are paramagnetic substances? These are the substances, they are attracted by the magnetic field. That is the first point, and there is, in these substances, there are 1 or more unpaired electrons is present. Okay, so I have given the example of copper sulfate. Manganese sulfate, it is there in your lab, which is a pink colored salt. So here copper sulfate, it is if it is in a hydrous form, which is blue in color, it also attracts towards the magnetic field, because in copper sulfate there is a 1 unpaired electron. What about manganese sulfate? In manganese sulfate, manganese, Mn, which is also a D block element. So see here, its atomic number 25. So the configuration, electronic configuration is 3d5, 4s2. Okay, 4s2. Now in MnSO4, manganese sulfate, manganese in +2 state. What happens? If you remove the 2 electrons from the outermost shell. So now let us remove 2 electrons from the 4s. So the configuration is changes to 3d5. Now there are, how many unpaired electrons are present? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Only 5 electrons are left here. All are unpaired electrons. They are not paired. Isn't it? So as the number of unpaired electron is more in any substance, then there is a stronger attraction towards the magnetic field. So compared to copper sulfate, manganese sulfate is more attracted by the magnetic field. Why it is so? Because in manganese sulfate we have 5 unpaired electrons, whereas in copper sulfate only 1 unpaired electron is present. Okay, so in paramagnetic substances they are attracted by the magnetic field. What about in case of oxygen? I have given the example of O2. Can you identify or can you find out any unpaired electrons here? No, as if we cannot detect the number of unpaired electrons by just writing the electronic configuration. It is not possible. But in molecular orbital diagram, you were studied in the first year chemical bonding chapter, where the concept of molecular orbitals, formation of molecular orbitals by the combination of atomic orbitals, right? So while writing the orbital diagram, molecular orbital diagram of oxygen, you may know that in the higher energy anti-bonding orbitals, it was found that there are unpaired electron is present even in O2, even in oxygen molecule there are unpaired electrons. So if you have first year's notebook of first years, just go through it. In O2 molecule there are unpaired electrons is present, therefore it is also a paramagnetic substance. Now suppose O2, oxygen or a copper sulfate, it is paramagnetic in nature, they are attracted by the magnetic field. How much amount or what is the quantity of that magnetic behavior? How much is there? To calculate the effect or quantity of the magnetic behavior, one formula is used here. Magnetic moment, mu, it is given as mu, which is equal to square root of n into n plus 2, where small letter n is the number of unpaired electrons. Okay, if you know the value of n in any substances, you can calculate the value of mu, that is magnetic moments. So greater the value of mu, that means it shows a stronger attraction towards the magnetic field. So this concept, it is there in the next chapter, that is D and F block element. We will discuss about it. Okay, so this is about paramagnetic substances. Next, the second category, diamagnetic substances. Diamagnetic, these are the substances, they are repelled by the magnetic field. There is no attraction towards the external magnetic field. So no attraction, these are the substances, they are repelled by the magnetic field. Why it is so? Because in these substances, in this type of substances, all the electrons are paired. All the electrons are paired. There are no unpaired electrons. Unpaired electrons are not there in this type of substances. So glass, next water, these are all diamagnetic substances. Here you cannot find out any the number of unpaired electrons. In water, H2O, if you write the bonding or the structure of water molecule, you will understand why there is no unpaired electron. So hence they will be repelled by the magnetic field. Okay, diamagnetic substances are the substances, they are repelled by the external magnetic field and all the electrons are paired here. So no unpaired electrons are present. Okay. Next, third type, it is ferromagnetic substances. Ferromagnetic substances are strongly attracted by the magnetic field. Strongly attracted by the magnetic field. Okay, there is a strong attraction towards the external magnet or magnetic field. For example, iron, nickel, all these comes under ferromagnetic substances. See, iron, okay, it is also an example for metallic solid. Under metallic solids, iron is there, nickel is there. So if it is a solid, metallic solid, then what are the constituent particles here? Metal atoms itself, right? So here it is Fe atom, here also iron. But we know that all the metals, they are electropositive in nature. What does it mean? Electropositivity in the sense they are the electron donors. They always lose their electrons. So iron, they may lose its electron and gets converted into Fe2 plus or maybe to Fe3 plus by the loss of electrons. So here I'll write, instead of particle, I'll write like this, see, plus minus. I have written the dipoles. What do you mean by dipole? Two ends with positive, opposite charges, with positive and negative charges here. Why I am writing like this? Because if you consider one single iron, it will lose electron because of its electropositivity. It will lose its electron, and to form positive ion, as well as there are presence of electrons also there, right? So it forms a dipole. So in iron solid, in iron, all the dipoles, there are so many dipoles are there like this. These are all dipoles. We can also call it as a domains. Okay, so in the absence of any magnetic field, see, before applying any magnetic field, if it has iron substance is there, then the dipoles, all the dipoles are in the random direction. See, random, they are randomly oriented like this. Okay, so there is no proper arrangement of in the domain structure because of the absence of the magnetic field. Now after applying if I keep this substance in the presence of magnetic field, or if we apply the magnetic field, what happens? These domains are arranged. See, all the domains are arranged in the direction of the magnetic field. Say I am applying the magnetic field in this direction, so this is a magnetic field. Okay, so this is a magnetic field. All the dipoles are aligned in the direction of the applied magnetic field. Okay, the substance becomes permanently magnetized. If we remove the magnetic field, let us remove the applied magnetic field, but still this iron piece behaves like a permanent magnet. It will not lose its magnetism. Clear? So ferromagnetic substances shows a strong attraction towards the external magnetic field. Once it gets magnetized, its magnetism will not goes. Okay, so examples here, iron, nickel, etc. Now the next type is antiferromagnetic substances. What is this antiferro? So in antiferromagnetic substances, the domain structure are similar to ferromagnetic. Okay, but see here, in antiferromagnetic substances, the dipoles or domains are in opposite direction. See, one of the dipole is in direction where the positive charge is here, in the another dipole. So here overall the magnetic moments gets cancels out. Similarly in this case, so all the dipoles, they are in opposite direction. So the net effect will be a 0. Here the net effect will be 0. That means it will not show any magnetism. Whereas in ferromagnetic substances there is a strong attraction towards the external magnetic field, whereas in antiferromagnetic substances the domains are arranged in the opposite direction, so the net effect will be equal to 0. So you will get mu value 0. What is mu? It is magnetic moments. How to calculate? Using the formula. We have the formula here, square root of n into n plus 2. So where in antiferromagnetic we'll end up with the answer that is mu value 0. That means they do not show any magnetic behavior. Examples for antiferromagnetic substances: MnO, manganese oxide, MnO2, or even Mn2. Okay, in one example you remember it, that is Mn comes under antiferromagnetic substances. Okay, the last type is ferrimagnetic substances. Ferrimagnetic substances shows a little attraction towards the external magnetic field, because in these substances the dipoles are arranged. This is arrow mark indicates what? The dipole itself. See, if I write like this, I can also represent it using a arrow mark, where head of the arrow mark point towards the positive charge, whereas okay. See, some dipoles are in the same direction, some are in the opposite direction, like this. So overall there is a effect, but it shows some kind of a magnetism, but it's not so stronger effect than if you compare with it a ferromagnetic. So ferromagnetic substances usually shows a greater magnetic property, whereas ferrimagnetic less. So the magnetic moment of ferrimagnetic, it is less than that of ferro, because of the arrangement of the domains. The domains are in the anti-parallel and in a parallel manner. See, if you consider, there is a effect, or in some other places there is the arrangement is in opposite manner, so the net effect will be gets cancels out. Okay, example for ferrimagnetic, it is Fe3O4, magnetite comes under ferrimagnetic substances, Fe3O4. So this is about the classification of solids based on their magnetic properties: paramagnetic, diamagnetic, ferro, antiferro and ferrimagnetic substances. Now see here, you can see here it looks like white colored solid, but actually it is having a pink color. Whatever I explained in the paramagnetic substances, manganese sulfate, right, it is actually pink in color. So now this comes under paramagnetic, that means it shows or it is attracted slightly by the magnetic field. Okay, so this is a magnet here, magnet. You may see here some of the substances, some of the crystals of the manganese sulfate, they gets attached or attracted by the magnet Yes or no? See here, isn't it? So that means manganese sulfate is a paramagnetic substance. Okay. Here is a list of important questions in this chapter, that is calculating the packing efficiency in a simple cube, calculate the packing efficiency in BCC, in body centered cubic unit cell, and calculate the packing efficiency in F centered, that is in FCC. So out of these 3 questions you will get 1 question for the final exam for 3 marks. Very very important question. Next one is about the calculation of the number of atoms per unit cell of simple, BCC and FCC, that you have to study the number of atoms calculation per unit cell. Okay, note it down. Next, write the differences between Frenkel and Schottky effect. Once again, it is very important question. So differences between Frenkel and Schottky effect. Next, write the differences between crystalline and amorphous solids, and even under the classification of solids, study the examples, okay, for each type. Examples for ionic solids, molecular solids, all these things. Okay, next, one more question, that is what is F center and what is coordination number. So add one more question here, that is write the differences between N type. Write the differences between N and P type semiconductor. Okay, write the differences between N and P type semiconductors. So this is about the first unit, that is the solid state. So I almost finished the concepts. Okay, so this is the right time, you have to study well, don't waste your time. I don't know whether I have reached your expectations or not, but I tried my level best to make you people to understand. Okay, be at home, stay safe. Thank you one and all.